Let's dive deeper now into JI's announcement with Alif Satria. He's Associate Research Fellow at the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research, S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Alif, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. So reports say JI has lost a significant amount of support, has become relatively weak in recent years. First off, why do you think JI decided to disband now? How expected was this move?
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. In regards to why now, JI has actually been evolving to adopt a more political, non-violent approach within the past decade. They have prioritized the use of da'wah, and they also barred the use of violence in the past decade. And we've seen also in the past 5 years, for example, JI has also used an infiltration strategy to infiltrate either political parties or, for example, the Indonesian Ulama Council to achieve their goals. So this, I think, is simply an evolution of those developing strategies, that now they feel that violence and the organization itself is not really necessary for JI to achieve their goals, and might actually be detrimental to JI's efforts to achieve their goals.
As you were speaking, we saw figures of those 16 top figures that made this announcement. What happens now to the rest of its members? You know, what happens if junior members don't necessarily agree with this move by the leadership?
Yeah. So that is, I think, the topic that's on everyone's mind right now. The announcement for JI to dissolve is a big news. It is the first time that so many big authorities in JI call for the dissolution of JI. The question is not necessarily from them, but how will the organization itself react? Now, we see that JI's members have been increasingly disciplined, at least in the past 10 years. They have a stricter recruitment program and internal security and policing mechanisms. And so we hope that most of JI members will respond positively towards this. Mm-hmm. However, we do know that JI is not monolithic, and there has been cases of JI splinters and factions operating independently from their senior leadership's directives in the past 5 years. For example, in 2019, there was a JI faction led by Imaruddin that planned to attack stores owned by Chinese Indonesians in Banten. This goes directly against JI's principle of not conducting violent attacks at the time. And so now, it's important to then monitor within JI who amongst either the younger generation or even amongst seniors within JI that might disagree to this move. And it's important then for counterterrorism units, Densus 88 and the National Counterterrorism Agency to quickly identify and move on these individuals quickly.
Yeah, so let's linger on that point. You know, with JI's disbanding, how much of a void is there? How likely is it that another extremist group, a splinter, could gain momentum and increase their activity in Southeast Asia?
So it is firstly important to note that within the past decade, JI has largely focused its operations in Indonesia. So it is no longer as big of a threat to the region as a whole as they were in early 2000s. That said, they do have a lingering influence towards Southeast Asia in general. In regards to who will then fill this void, it does pose an opportunity for example, pro-ISIS individuals in Indonesia, for example, the Jemaah Islamiyah, to then pick up on the members who might be disillusioned by JI or might be disappointed by JI's call to cease the struggle. And if they are smart enough, then they could take this opportunity to conduct more attacks or at least capitalize on disgruntled members and supporters. That said, we need to also understand that in general, pro-ISIS groups in Indonesia and terrorist organizations in Indonesia have been significantly weakened, and not just JI. And so all of this, whether or not it will come to a threat, will really depend on whether or not the region's counterterrorism operations and counterterrorism unit will continue to effectively prevent attacks.
I'm curious, you know, what is it going to take to convince authorities that JI are legitimate political actors? Is that their ultimate goal?
It is I would say largely one of their main strategies to achieve their goals now is to operate within the confines of Indonesia's regulations and laws. And I think it is hard to determine how genuine they are in trying to do this. However, you really need to see, I would say, two things. First of all, whether or not they are able to explicitly call against the creation of a caliphate, and whether or not this call to not necessarily disband the organization, but also calling for support of Indonesia as a state and as a nation, and going against the concept of a caliphate. I think that's number one. But second, we'd also have to see the grassroots commanders within JI, whether or not they will then follow. Because usually seniors can say that they want to dissolve JI, they want to become a more political-oriented organization. But if the members and commanders on the grassroots level don't necessarily agree with this, then I would say that it is still not a threat to ignore.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for your insights this afternoon, Alif. Alif Satria, Associate Research Fellow at the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Thank you.